You already know how this one ends. The girl wears a red hood. She walks through the forest alone. She meets a wolf. She's warned not to talk to strangers, but talks to one anyway. The wolf gets to grandmother's house first, eats the grandmother, disguises himself in her bed. The girl arrives, notices something is wrong. What big eyes, what big ears, what big teeth. And then a woodsman shows up, cuts the wolf open, everyone is fine. Lesson learned. Don't talk to strangers. The end. Except that's not the story. That's the version the Brothers Grimm published in 1812. Already a cleaned-up retelling of an older French version by Charles Perrault from 1697. And Perrault's version was already a sanitized adaptation of something much older. An oral tale that had been circulating in the French countryside for centuries before anyone wrote it down. In the oldest versions of this story, the ones that peasants actually told each other before the academics arrived with their notebooks, there is no woodsman. There is no rescue. The girl is not naive. The wolf is not an animal. And the story ends very differently. Tonight we're going all the way back, through the Grimms, through Perrault, to the story that existed before anyone decided it needed a happy ending. Before we get into the actual story, I want to establish something. Because Little Red Riding Hood is unusual among fairy tales in that we can actually trace 3 distinct versions across 3 centuries, and each one tells us something different about the time it came from. The oldest is what scholars call the oral tradition version, sometimes recorded as the story of grandmother. It circulated in rural France from at least the 10th century, possibly earlier. No one wrote it down for hundreds of years. We only know it because folklorists eventually collected fragments from village storytellers in the 19th century. The first written version came from Charles Perrault in 1697, a French poet and member of the court of King Louis XIV. His audience was not peasant children. It was the aristocracy, and his version was designed specifically to deliver a moral warning to young women of the French court. The third version came from the Brothers Grimm in 1812. And as we talked about in the last episode, the Grimms were not writing for adults. They were building a national folklore archive, and over successive editions they softened what they collected to make it more acceptable. Each version of this story reflects exactly what the people who told it were afraid of, and who they were afraid for. The oral version is about survival. Perrault's version is about sexual danger. The Grimm's version is about obedience. The same story, 3 completely different meanings. That shift is what we're going to trace tonight. We'll start at the beginning, the oral tradition, and work forward. Because once you know what the story originally was, every change that came after becomes impossible to ignore. A girl lives in a village at the edge of a forest. Her grandmother lives on the other side. She's sent alone through the woods to bring her grandmother a loaf of bread and a pot of fresh butter. On the road, she meets a bzu, not a wolf. A bzu, the French peasant word for werewolf. A creature that looks human but isn't. In the context of rural 10th century France, this distinction mattered enormously. Werewolves were not mythological. They were real, documented, feared. Men who became animals. Men who killed. The bzu asks her where she's going. She tells him, her grandmother's house, through the forest. He asks which path she plans to take. She says the path of needles. He tells her he'll take the path of pins, and they'll see who gets there first. The bzu arrives first. He kills the grandmother. He does something specific with the body. He sets her flesh on a platter and pours her blood into a bottle and places both in the cupboard. Then he puts on her clothes and gets into her bed to wait. The girl arrives. Knocks. The door opens. She has bread and butter. The voice from the bed, her grandmother's voice, tells her there's meat in the cupboard and wine on the shelf. She's hungry from the journey. She eats. A small cat in the corner of the room watches her eat. And the cat says, "A slut is she who eats the flesh and drinks the blood of her grandmother." The girl hears this. She finishes eating. This detail, the girl unknowingly eating her own grandmother, is one of the most disturbing elements in the entire history of European folklore. And it appears in multiple independent versions of this story collected across different regions of France, which suggests it wasn't a local aberration. It was a consistent, deliberate part of the original tale. The scholars who study this story have noted that it functions as a kind of ritual defilement. The wolf is not just killing the grandmother, he is making the girl complicit in the act without her knowledge. Then the voice from the bed tells her to undress and come to bed. She asks what she should do with her apron. The voice says, "Throw it in the fire. You won't need it anymore." Her bodice, the fire. Her skirt, the fire. Her petticoat, the fire. Her stockings, the fire. Each item of clothing goes into the flames. She gets into bed, and in the dark she begins to notice. She comments on how hairy the body beside her is, how large the hands, how long the teeth, the better to eat you with. Now, here is where this version diverges from everything that came after it. There is no woodsman. There is no hunter. No one is coming to save her. But the girl doesn't die. She tells the Bzu she needs to go outside to relieve herself. He ties a woolen rope around her ankle so she cannot escape and lets her out. She ties the rope to a tree in the courtyard and runs. He calls after her. She doesn't answer. He looks out. She's gone. She saves herself, with nothing but quick thinking and a rope. This is perhaps the most significant detail lost in every subsequent version of this story. In the original oral tradition, Little Red Riding Hood is not a passive victim. She is a girl in a genuinely dangerous situation who survives through her own intelligence. The woodsman, introduced by the Grimms, removes her agency entirely. She goes from a girl who saves herself to a girl who is saved. That is not a minor change. It is a complete inversion of the story's meaning. The oral version was told to young girls as a warning, but also, perhaps, as a form of instruction. This is what a wolf looks like. This is what he will do. And this is how you survive him. In 1697, Charles Perrault published his version of the story in a collection called Tales of Mother Goose, Contes de ma mère Eloy in French. Perrault was a sophisticated man writing for a sophisticated audience. His collection was read aloud at the French court. His readers wore powdered wigs and attended the opera. They were not afraid of werewolves. So he made changes. The Bzu became a wolf, a real animal, not a supernatural creature. The cannibalism disappears. The clothing ritual disappears. The girl no longer eats her grandmother. She no longer undresses. What remains is the structure: girl, wolf, forest, grandmother, bed, teeth. And Perrault kept the ending. In his version, the wolf eats the girl. There is no rescue. She dies. The story ends. But then Perrault does something the oral tradition never did. He adds an explicit moral at the end, written in verse, addressed directly to young women of the court. He writes that children, especially young girls, pretty, courteous, and well-bred, do very wrong to listen to strangers. And that wolves come in many kinds. Some are loud and hateful and obvious. But the most dangerous, he writes, are the gentle ones, the obliging ones. The wolves who follow young girls through the streets and into their homes, speaking softly. He ends, "These gentle wolves are of all wolves the most dangerous." Perrault's wolf is not an animal. His audience understood this perfectly. In 17th century French slang, to say a girl had seen the wolf meant she had lost her virginity. The Red Hood, an addition Perrault himself made, not present in the oral tradition, is the color of scandal and sin. The girl walking alone through the forest is a girl who has stepped outside the protection of her family. The wolf is every man who would take advantage of that. Perrault's version strips out the cannibalism and the nudity of the oral tale, but it keeps something the Grimms would later remove: the consequence. In Perrault's story, the girl makes a mistake and she pays for it. There is no rescue. The moral isn't softened by a happy ending. She talks to the wolf. She tells him where her grandmother lives. She dallies in the forest picking flowers while he runs ahead. She gets into bed with him. And she dies. That is Perrault's point. The story is not a thriller with a happy ending. It is a warning with a body count. The Brothers Grimm published their version, Little Red Cap, Rot Caption, in 1812. They had collected it from two sisters, Jeanette and Marie Hasenpflug, who were of French Huguenot descent. Scholars believe the sisters had learned the story from the French oral tradition, which means the Grimms were receiving a version already shaped by Perrault, already several steps removed from the original. And then they changed it further. The most significant addition, the huntsman. A man in the forest who hears the wolf snoring, suspects something is wrong, cuts him open with scissors, pulls out Little Red Cap and her grandmother, both alive, and fills the wolf's stomach with stones. The wolf wakes up, staggers outside, falls into a well, and drowns. Everyone is fine. Compare this to where we started. In the oral tradition, a girl walks into the most dangerous situation imaginable and saves herself using nothing but her own intelligence. In Perrault, she makes mistakes and pays for them. The story is honest about consequence. In the Grimms, a man arrives and saves her from her own naivety. Each version of this story makes a different argument about what girls are. The oral tradition says, a girl can be smart enough to survive. Perrault says, a girl who makes mistakes will suffer for them. The Grimms say, a girl needs to be saved. 3 centuries, 3 completely different beliefs about women and danger, all wearing the same red hood. The Grimms also added a second ending in later editions, a kind of appendix where Little Red Cap and her grandmother, having learned from the first experience, outsmart a second wolf entirely on their own. Scholars believe this was added to soften the passivity of the main story. It was tacked on, and it reads that way. But the version that survived, the version that became definitive, is the one with the huntsman, the one where she is saved. I want to spend a moment on the Red Hood, because it's the one detail that has survived every version of this story, and it's the detail that carries the most meaning. The Red Hood does not appear in the oral tradition. It was invented by Charles Perrault in 1697. He chose red deliberately. Red in 17th century Europe was the color of sin, of blood, of danger. It was the color that marked women of questionable virtue. A girl wearing red was a girl who was already, symbolically, in trouble. Perrault's audience would have understood this immediately. The red hood is not an innocent garment. It is a signal. The hood itself also carries meaning. In French, the word chaperon, hood, had a secondary meaning. A chaperone, someone who guards a young woman's virtue. The girl is wearing her own guardian on her head, and she ignores everything that guardian should be telling her. Later scholars have read the forest itself as a symbol of the space between safety and danger, the space between the protection of the family home and the relative safety of the grandmother's house. When the girl enters the forest, she enters a zone where the rules of civilization don't apply, where a man can become a wolf. And the path. In the oral tradition, the girl chooses between the path of needles and the path of pins. Folklorists have interpreted this as a reference to the stages of a girl's training. Needles for the more advanced seamstress, pins for the apprentice. The path of needles is the grown woman's path. The wolf takes it. The girl takes the path of pins. She is not yet ready for what waits at the other end. What the story has always been about, in every version, is the moment a girl leaves safety and enters a world that was not designed to protect her. The details change. The anxiety underneath them never does. Little Red Riding Hood is over 1,000 years old. It has survived in the oral tradition of at least a dozen cultures across Europe and Asia. It has been written down, rewritten, illustrated, filmed, adapted, and sanitized across 3 centuries. And every single time someone adapted it, they made the same kind of choice. How much danger is this story allowed to show? How much agency does the girl get? And what happens when she makes a mistake? The oral tradition gave her survival through intelligence. Perrault gave her death as consequence. The Grimms gave her rescue through dependence. Disney, in 1922, their very first animated short, gave her a wolf who dances. Each version tells you more about the people who told it than it does about the girl in the red hood. The story that has lasted 1,000 years is not about a girl who is saved. It is about a girl who faces something genuinely dangerous, something that looks familiar, that speaks in a voice she trusts, that lives in a bed she has known all her life. and has to decide, alone, what she is going to do about it. The oldest version of this story trusted her to figure it out. Everything since has trusted her a little less. These stories survived 1,000 years because people kept passing them on. If you want to help keep the real versions alive, like and subscribe. The next one is already coming.